Hey everybody, Jeff here. So I thought I would show some things I recently acquired. I got a chance to get out today. We were heading to this one place, I guess you would call it a thrift store. The place is called Yard Sale, and it's a store. At first I thought it was like an antique store. We went to it about a year ago, and I ended up coming out with a bunch of, I think it was mostly a lot of Christian stuff. So anyway, we were headed there because it was one of those places just had records everywhere in the corner, and it was all messy. I thought, well, let's go there. We had a couple hours to kill before we had to pick up our daughter. So we're headed that way, and then we pass. My wife sees a sign out of the corner of her eyes that says Vinyl Records, and she's like, "Arr!" And she hit the brakes and did a turn real quick, and it was like a, it was sort of like, no, it wasn't really a thrift store. It was called Secondhand something, but it was a house, and it had been converted basically into. It almost looked like a craft store, and every room, from what she was telling me, each room had a different vendor. And so they had things that were handmade. They had some stuff that was antique-y looking, but it was mostly handmade goods. But they had a sign out there on the street that pointed in saying Vinyl Records. So we thought, well, let's check it out. And this was like literally a block or two from the place we were going, which we never made it to, by the way. So we went in and went upstairs and went in and started looking. Now I was kind of, at first I was really hopeful. When I walked in, they had some albums that were up on little displays on the wall, and they had Kiss Creatures of the Night, and it was the original 82 release, and the cover looked to be in really great condition. And I checked the album, and the album was, I would say, very good, plus near mint. I mean, it was very great condition. The cover did, however, up in the top corner, literally the top quadrant, the sticker had a sticker, Music Man, which I get was a record store, about this big. It literally covered like a quarter of the record, and it was stuck to it with, and then it had tape across it. So looking past that, the cover was in great condition and the record was in great condition, but it had a price tag of $75 on it. And I'm not at that point yet where any record to me is worth $75. I did pick up a couple things. All their things were priced a little higher than I wanted. So there was one or two things I could have come out of there with that I didn't want to pay the prices they had. But I found a couple that I would pay. And when I was down there, I asked her, I said, hey, would you all take an offer on that Kiss album? She goes, well, each one of these places is run by a different person. I'd have to call the guy who does the records and ask him. And so I offered him $40, and I'm like, because I see him online for running about $50. Of course, you got to pay shipping and tends to be overseas. But anyway, she called the guy and he didn't answer, so I couldn't even get a hold of him to do it. Here's what I did come out with. I picked up the first Alcatraz album. This is the one with Yngwie Malmsteen. Now, I never got into these guys much back in the day because I was never much of a Graham Bonnet fan. In my later years, I have learned to appreciate him more. So I thought it'd be great to have this. It was in rough condition. The cover has some, looks like it got wet or something, and it's got, you can see they colored it with the brown magic marker, and it's got some beaten up areas there, and then the back is likewise. The back has kind of been chewed up. Somebody colored it in with the black Sharpie. But the album itself was in very good plus. All the records there that I picked up and looked at were in really good condition, and this was under $10, and I thought, yeah, I'll go ahead and get it. And yeah, so I wanted to got to grab that, and then I grabbed this Black and Blues in Heat. They also had Without Love, but I already had that, but I didn't have this one. And this one was a few dollars more, but I looked online, and you know, it was about the same price as I would have had to pay online. And it was in really great condition. Everything, nothing was banged up on this. It's got the original inner minor wear. Nothing I can't deal with. And like I said, the record was in just really great condition. So it was nice to go to a place like this and find some 80s metal. Like I said, they had another Black and Blue album. They had an Annihilator album, but they wanted $30 for that, the Alice one. And then they had a lot of the typical stuff, classic rock and things along that line. But I went ahead and, you know, like I say, I was glad to find that. The other day I was watching Darren over at the Music Vault, catching up on some of the videos he had done recently, and he showed this album, and while I knew this band existed, I somehow had missed the fact that they had actually released an album and it was out, and I quickly on that one ran online, tried to find it, and ended up finding it on Discogs. Grabbed it. It was brand new. The price was very reasonable, and it was on colored vinyl, which the one Darren shown was a black vinyl. And so I grabbed this. If you can even read this, yeah, I guess it's really dark. It's Beeler, and it is Messages to the Dead. Now Beeler is, if you're familiar with Exciter, it's Dan Beeler, the drummer and vocalist from Exciter, who I have shown recently because I finally got a hold of all their vinyl stuff from the early days. And this is the band he did after, or a handful of years ago. This was actually released in 2011. Now, I didn't look too deep online, but this is a High Rollers Records, which they tend to release things that have been out a while. And this is the only release I'm finding under Beeler, and it's 2011. Was it recorded in 2011? I haven't looked in enough detail to see if that's the case. But I was quick to grab this because I'm a big Dan Beeler fan. It's a bit more aggressive and very different from Exciter. While it is still thrashy, his vocal style goes up and down and all over the places, and so it's got a little more variety to it, and it's quite a bit. Maybe it's just more modern sounding, heavy, but it's a really good album. Now, it came in multiple colors. The guy listed this as being, it was new, but it was unshrink wrapped, so he could look at it. But I just noticed when I was putting it on Discogs that there's two versions, and he listed this as being the red and black splatter edition, or red with black, splatters. But when I got it and I opened it, it's pretty much pure red. So when I looked on Discogs, I found that there was one also that was blood red. Honestly, blood red is more of a crimson to me. This is just flat out red, which I guess would be considered blood red if you're looking into Hollywood blood. So anyway, I guess I have the red one. It was 100 of these made. There was 100 of the other red ones too. Total of 1,000 albums. But when I got this, I'm like, that is just a really dark. It actually looks better on the camera here than it does in person. In person, it's almost hard to read. Anyway, Dan Beeler, thrash metal, great stuff. I've really been enjoying that. And this is my weekly Amazon find, and the reason I grabbed this was just because the price has been fluctuating, and I went ahead and wanted to grab it before it disappeared. It's Wasp's Hell Dorado. I will say this ranks pretty low in my Wasp discography. This is around the time, this is right after KFD, which has always kind of ranked low for me. To me, even though I know Wasp has always been shock rock, I know they had the Animal song in the beginning, I loved all that stuff. I know they've always been somewhat perverse, is a word maybe, raunchy, but KFD is where they became outright a little more raunchier, a little more, a lot more anger and cursing. And this one is not much better. This one's very raunchy, and so it's never been, I like some of the songs that are not, but it's never been a super favorite. But I wanted to get it for the collection. It's orangish looking. It also seems around this time, it seemed like Blackie's singing style started fluctuating to where instead of mostly singing, he kind of is more, to me it seems more like he's yelling it, kind of screaming the vocals more. It's hard to describe. There's not as much dynamics in his voice. And so, around this time, I mean, I bought this when it came out back in the day on CD, and I was like, wow, this is like really, really in your face, raunchy and disgusting at times. So it's probably not going to get a whole lot of play, but as a collector, you buy this stuff. And plus I noticed, obviously, and this is something I always hear Scott Waters talk about, but you can tell from the cover that they just took the CD. They did not go back to the original artwork and get the actual high res and make a cover. They took the CD and blew it up. It is all This is all fuzzy and grainy. It's pretty cheaply made. You know, this is another one of those Madfish. I have to assume that they didn't put a lot of money into reproducing them. They didn't go back and say, hey, let's find the original art piece, let's get it, let's blow it up. You know, hopefully it's a vector graphic of some sort. Maybe they didn't have access to that, probably didn't have access to that, but you know, if they really would have done it right, it would have probably been to go back and get all that original stuff. So, but this one stands out when you see it. It's just like, wow, the whole thing just kind of feels blurry, pixelated, blurry. It's just not great. But anyway, sounds great and looks great, and so I had to grab this. That is all that I found, but it's been, you know, that was pretty good for this week. So that's all I had to share for you this time. So thanks for watching, and rock on.